You look around and feel that everyone is moving forward, while you can barely breathe. But what if the problem is not delay? Maybe you're pushing yourself too hard, thinking that you were left behind, that it took longer than it should, that everyone else advanced, except you. But what if this is not delay? What if it's weight? Weight of expectations, weight of emotional responsibilities, weight of trying to handle everything alone. Sometimes the body slows down not because you failed, but because you have already carried more than you could carry. And when the mind insists on running, the heart asks for a pause. Today, I want to invite you to look at this with more kindness. Maybe you're not late. Maybe it's just overwhelmed and about to reorganize itself from within. You know that feeling that everyone else is advancing except you? Like this, you open Instagram and see so-and-so getting married, the other one buying an apartment, the one she knows from work being promoted, and you're still trying to pick up the pieces, reorganize yourself, understand why it seems so difficult to achieve what seems so natural to everyone. The truth that no one talks about is this: maybe the problem is not that you are late, but that you are overloaded in a way that others cannot see. While they sold you the story that there is a right age for everything, they forgot to mention that some people start this race carrying an invisible weight that should never be there. What if I told you that this sense of backwardness is actually the symptom of something much bigger, much deeper, which has to do with emotional overload, mental exhaustion, and a society that completely ignores the load you've been carrying alone? Stay with me until the end of this video, because you'll understand why you're not late. You were just surviving while they thought you should be running. If this made sense to you, let me know in the comments. She looks around and sees friends getting married, colleagues buying apartments, acquaintances announcing promotions at work. And her? Still trying to pick up the pieces, reorganize life, find an inner rhythm that makes sense. This feeling of chasing after it, of never achieving what others have already achieved, is not a sign of failure. It is the reflection of an emotional overload that no one has taught to name. Self-demand whispers that something is wrong, but perhaps the problem is not with it, but with the unrealistic expectations it carries on its back. Millions of women live this movie every day, waking up with the uncomfortable feeling that they missed the train of life. While celebrating other people's achievements on social networks, they feel a tightness in their chest, an excessive comparison that erodes their peace of mind. It's not envy, it's not malice. It's spiritual fatigue of trying to keep up with a race that was never fair from the start. The truth is that she is not competing on equal terms, but she still blames herself for not being in the same position as those who had less weight to carry. What if the story she was told was incomplete? What if there was a much bigger, much more humane explanation for this feeling of backwardness that doesn't let her sleep in peace? What no one warns is that this distorted perception has deep roots, planted by a society that completely ignores female mental exhaustion. Before believing that you owe something to time, it is worth understanding what really happens when a woman carries the world on her back and is still charged for not running faster. Society sold a perfect schedule. At 25, you should be stable in your career. At 30, married. At 35, with children. At 40, financially consolidated. This imaginary timeline was drawn without considering traumas, without calculating emotional overload, without including in the equation the invisible responsibilities that some people carry from an early age. It is as if everyone started the race at the same starting point, with the same empty backpack, when in reality some already start carrying stones that no one sees. Self-demand grows precisely because she compares her 5th kilometer with the 15th kilometer of those who have never had to stop to breathe. No one talks about the woman who at 22 was already supporting her family, or the one who at 28 was still recovering from an abusive relationship that destroyed her self-esteem. There is no post on Instagram celebrating the years someone spent just trying to survive emotionally, processing grief, rebuilding emotional awareness after being dismantled from within. The official timeline completely ignores these necessary breaks, as if they were optional, as if everyone has the luxury of moving on without first fixing what's broken. But healing does not appear on the resume, and starting over does not count as an achievement in the eyes of those who have never had to do it. What makes this lie even more cruel is that it masquerades as a meritocracy. If you wanted to, you would have made it. But wanting has never been the problem. The problem is wanting while carrying a mental exhaustion that no one recognizes as real. It's trying to build a house while putting out fires every day. It's planning for the future while barely making it through the present. And when she finally understands that the timeline is a fiction, she begins to see where the real overload was all along. She wakes up, prepares coffee, organizes the house, answers work messages, remembers her mother-in-law's birthday, schedules her parents' medical appointment, plans lunch, manages emotional conflicts in the family, all this before 9 in the morning. This female mental load does not appear in any productivity spreadsheet, does not earn praise, does not count as official work, but consumes energy as if it were 3 simultaneous jobs. The emotional overload of being the invisible manager of everything and everyone leaves little room for herself, little breath to pursue personal goals. Meanwhile, self-demand whispers that it should be able to handle more, yield more, be more, ignoring that it has already been operating at the limit for years. It is not laziness when she arrives at the end of the day, exhausted without having done anything productive. It's the weight of carrying social expectations that have never been fairly divided. It's the emotional sensitivity of absorbing each family problem as if it were your own. It's the exhaustion of constantly having to anticipate the needs of others. A man can focus 100% on his career because there is a structure, often invisible, that takes care of the rest for him. She needs to build her career, keep the structure working, and still pretend that it doesn't cost anything. Excessive comparison with those who had support will never be fair, because the starting conditions were never the same. This overload is not dramatic. It does not come with neon signs warning that it is destroying her from the inside. It comes disguised as normality. That's just the way it is. Every woman goes through this. Spiritual fatigue accumulates in silence, day after day, until a simple moment, seeing a friend conquering something, becomes a trigger to feel insufficient. But not enough for whom? For a standard that was created by people who never had to carry half of what they carry. And it is precisely there, in this systemic exhaustion ignored by everyone, that lies the real explanation for this feeling of always chasing. While some colleagues were moving up the career ladder, she was fighting silent battles that no one saw behind the scenes. Maybe it was an unprocessed grief that stole your energy every day, or a toxic relationship that drained years of your life and destroyed your self-esteem little by little. It could be that she faced paralyzing anxiety, depression that made even getting out of bed a heroic achievement, or childhood traumas that finally surfaced demanding attention. This invisible emotional overload doesn't pause life. Bills keep coming, social expectations keep charging, self-demand keeps hammering that she should be better than she is. The inconvenient truth is that there is no fair schedule when people are playing completely different games. While some ran marathons, she was just trying to survive the next day, gathering the strength not to fall apart completely. The financial pressure of supporting herself, and sometimes others, while dealing with spiritual fatigue is an equation that doesn't add up, but she tries to solve it anyway. No one applauds when she manages to maintain personal boundaries in a toxic environment. No one celebrates when she chooses to leave a destructive relationship even though she has nowhere to go. These wins don't make for an inspiring post, but they cost more courage than any promotion at work. The mental exhaustion of carrying all this alone, without recognition, without validation, creates a fatigue that goes far beyond the body. It's an exhaustion of the soul, a tiredness of needing to be strong when all she wanted was to be able to weaken without being judged. And here comes someone from the outside who has never seen this fight and asks why she hasn't achieved certain things yet, as if the mere fact that she is still standing is not already the greatest achievement of all. But this strength, this inner process of resisting and rebuilding, is rarely accounted for when society measures success. Social media has become a showcase of edited achievements, where everyone seems to be living the best version of life while she can barely keep her sanity. The one she knows who got married at 25, bought an apartment at 28, and traveled to Europe at 30. Her feed doesn't show the anxiety crises, the empty marriage, the financial pressure disguised as stability. Excessive comparison feeds on these clippings, these embellished half-truths, creating an illusion that others have everything resolved while it is always late. But no one posts about emotional overload. No one shares mental exhaustion in stories. No one puts a beautiful filter on existential crisis. The person who seems advanced may be completely lost inside, living on autopilot just to keep up appearances. She may be in a relationship out of convenience, a job she hates, a life she didn't really choose. She only followed the script because it was expected of her. Meanwhile, she who is late is perhaps doing the hardest job of all, questioning patterns, setting personal boundaries, seeking a genuine reconnection with herself. This interior process doesn't get likes, it doesn't generate engagement, it doesn't impress anyone at the family lunch. But it builds a solid foundation that no finance department can offer. The poison of comparison lies precisely in measuring incomparable realities. She doesn't see the other person's struggles, just as the other doesn't see theirs. But she assumes that someone else's life is perfect, while her own is chaotic. This self-demand based on assumptions destroys the emotional awareness that she so badly needs to cultivate. The truth is that each person is carrying different backpacks, facing unique battles, paying invisible prices for each choice. And maybe, just maybe, being late is actually being on the right track, even if no one understands it yet. There is no delay when she is doing the deep work of building real foundations instead of beautiful facades. Genuine growth has never been fast. It's slow, painful, full of setbacks that look like failures, but are actually necessary adjustments. While others piled up superficial achievements without question, she was unlearning toxic patterns, breaking destructive family cycles, healing wounds that no one but her knew existed. This inner process of real transformation is worth more than any invented timeline, but self-demand insists on saying that time wasted healing is wasted time. Lie. It's time invested in not repeating the same mistakes forever. Emotional healing, setting healthy personal boundaries, developing genuine emotional awareness, these all count as progress. Even if it doesn't earn a graduation photo or achievement post, the woman who spent years in therapy undoing limiting beliefs is light years ahead of those who only accumulated material goods without ever looking inside. The one who had the courage to start over from scratch at 35, leaving a life that was not hers, is building something much more solid than those who just followed the social script without questioning. The spiritual fatigue of carrying this journey alone is real, but the result is a version of it that no one else can easily break. To redefine late is to understand that she's not competing in a linear race where everyone wants to get to the same place. She's building a unique path at her own pace, prioritizing things that most people ignore until they collapse. While the emotional overload of others is still disguised as productivity, she has already recognized her own and is doing something about it. This level of self-compassion and conscious spirituality doesn't happen overnight. It demands a necessary break that society despises, but which is essential for those who want to truly live. Even carrying all this emotional overload, she started doing things that the old version would never do, saying no without guilt, setting personal boundaries with those who always stepped on her, refusing invitations that drain her energy just to please others. These small acts of courage don't appear on LinkedIn, they don't make headlines, but they represent a quiet revolution happening from within. Self-demand still tries to convince her that this is selfishness, but the emotional awareness she has been cultivating knows the truth. Protecting her peace is not a luxury, it is survival. Every boundary she draws is a statement that her well-being matters as much as anyone else's. She also began to question old beliefs that she carried as absolute truths. Women need to be strong all the time. Asking for help is weakness. Resting is laziness. These toxic narratives that have generated so much mental exhaustion are being replaced by something more human, kinder to herself. Now she chooses peace over approval, even when it disappoints other people's expectations. It prioritizes mental health over insane productivity, even if it means seeming less ambitious in the eyes of those who have never understood their inner process. This shift in values is not retrogression. It is emotional maturity in action. It is conscious spirituality flourishing where before there was only cruel self-demand. The most powerful sign of evolution is when it finally recognizes its own value without needing constant external validation. You don't need to prove anything to anyone anymore. You don't obsessively compare yourself to other people's achievements. You don't let excessive comparison steal your joy in small victories. The emotional sensitivity that was once used against her has now become a self-care tool. She senses when she is at the limit and acts before breaking. This ability to reconnect with oneself, to listen to the inner rhythm instead of the external noise, is the kind of wisdom that only comes after a lot of spiritual fatigue transformed into learning. She needs to hear this. She needs someone to say out loud, and with all the letters, you are allowed to rest without guilt, to go slowly without feeling inferior, to start over as many times as necessary. It doesn't matter if she's 30, 40, 50 years old. Her time isn't up. In fact, she's just really getting started, now that she knows who she really is. That necessary pause that she resisted so much can finally happen, because the emotional overload accumulated by years is not resolved with more productivity. It is resolved with radical self-compassion. Her inner rhythm has never been the same as that of others, and forcing a speed that is not hers only generates more mental exhaustion disguised as progress. Society will continue to demand it. Social networks will continue to show more advanced people. The family will continue to ask about plans that they do not yet have. But so what? The opinion of others does not pay the emotional bills that she has been paying alone for so long. Setting personal limits also includes the expectations that try to dictate her time, with the self-demand that insists on comparing her with those who have never gone through what she went through. Allowing yourself to go at your own pace is not giving up. It is recognizing that each inner process has its time, that healing does not happen at industrial speed, that reconnection with yourself cannot be rushed just because someone thinks it should. This radical permission to be human, to fail, to start over, to change your mind halfway through, that's real freedom. The emotional awareness she has developed through so much pain now allows her to navigate life with less judgment and more compassion for herself. Spiritual fatigue begins to give way to a different, more sustainable energy, which does not come from external pressure but from internal alignment. And when she finally accepts that she can go on her own time, something magical happens. She stops feeling late and starts feeling exactly where she needs to be. She's not behind. She's exactly where she needs to be to become who she really is, not who she was told to be. Every detour, every restart, every moment that seemed like a setback was actually polishing a version of her that no conventional timeline could create. The emotional overload she carried, the mental exhaustion she faced, the spiritual fatigue that almost broke her. All this became fuel for a transformation that goes far beyond material achievements. She's building something rare, a life that makes sense from the inside out, based on emotional awareness rather than social approval. Her path was never about getting there first, it was about getting there in one piece. While others ran without looking inward, she did the hard work of questioning everything, of setting personal boundaries, of cultivating self-compassion instead of destructive self-demand. This emotional sensitivity that society tries to sell as weakness is actually its greatest strength. The ability to feel deeply, to recognize when something isn't right, to prioritize conscious spirituality over empty appearances. Her inner rhythm has always been different because her destiny has always been unique. And now, looking back, she can see clearly. There was no delay, there was preparation. There was no failure, there was learning. There was no wasted time. There was a necessary pause for the reconnection with herself to really happen. Excessive comparison loses its power when it understands that it is not competing with anyone else. It is becoming. And this version of it, forged in pain, in resilience, in the most honest inner process there is worth more than any invented schedule. You're not late. You are exactly where you need to be to become who you really are. So tell me something. After everything you've heard here, do you still really believe that you're late? Or did he finally understand that the delay never existed? What existed was a gigantic emotional overload that no one validated as real. Now comes the part that really matters. What are you going to do with this knowledge? Will you continue to compare yourself to someone who has never carried half the weight you carry? Or will you finally give yourself radical permission to go at your inner pace without guilt? Because one thing I guarantee you, knowledge without action does not transform anything. You can watch this video, agree with everything, feel that momentary relief, and tomorrow go back to the same cycle of self-pressure and excessive comparison. Or you can choose different. You can choose to set personal boundaries for real. You can choose to cultivate self-compassion instead of cruel self-demand. You can choose reconnection with yourself instead of external approval. So I ask you, which version of you will wake up tomorrow? The one who still believes in the lie of backwardness, or the one who finally understood that she is exactly where she needs to be to become who she really is? If you want to continue on this journey of emotional awareness, of conscious spirituality, of learning to live in your time without destroying yourself in the process, subscribe here to the channel and activate the notification bell, because this is just the beginning of your reconnection with a life that finally makes sense. So, let's get together on this.